Good evening, everyone. My name is Rudy, and today I'm going to be discussing the elaboration likelihood model and also giving an example from my personal experience. To break it down, the elaboration likelihood model is a way to examine how likely a person is to elaborate. To do so, the theory says there are two cognitive processes that people use in order to process an argument and come to a conclusion on where they stand. The first is the central route, which is actually thinking and taking all factors into consideration before coming to a conclusion. The second is the peripheral route, which is not really looking at specific details, but more about details that aren't directly related to the topic at hand. One of the simplest ways to explain the elaboration likelihood model is when someone is buying a car. I recently bought a car, so I'll be sharing my experience through each of the lens of the central and peripheral route. When I decided I was going to buy my car, I was very unsure which I was going to buy. I have little knowledge of the cars, and it was my best interest to buy a car that was suitable for me. I am a commuter student, so I need something that doesn't use too much gas. I'm pretty young, so I don't need anything fancy. Also, it would have to be affordable since I'm a full-time student and I have a job that can only support a certain amount. As you can already tell, I'm thinking really hard about all the details I'm taking into consideration just to buy this car. It's a big decision, so I have to really make sure I know what I'm choosing. This is an example of the central route. Now, maybe if I had a bigger budget or had more important overriding factors, I might have to just cut to the chase and perhaps buy a higher priced fancy car. Or maybe I'd buy the newest model of the same car that my friend has since I liked his so much. Maybe I already had a car in mind because of previous experience or knowledge, so I wouldn't really be thinking too hard about the car and just relied on these factors to come to a decision. This is an example of the peripheral route. Now that I've described my experience, I'm going to be discussing this a little bit further. Using the peripheral route doesn't necessarily mean that you're making a rash decision, but rather that you've already have some sort of preconceived notion about what you want due to some more important factors. For example, maybe in the future I have a much larger budget, so I would instantly roll out the lower packages and buy the higher priced one, even if it may cost more. Using the peripheral route can also cause you to make an unconscious decision. For example, perhaps a major celebrity was selling me the car, even though I didn't like the car for whatever reason. Because I'm basically starstruck, I am more than likely to use the peripheral route and buy the car because the celebrity said so, and later realize that I do not like the car and bought it impulsively. Because there are two routes, that doesn't mean that we either use one or the other. Normally, it's a combination of both. Sometimes you may not pay close attention to the argument or details until something important to you is mentioned. Going back to the car, let's say I was thinking heavily using the central route. Then one of the car salesmen comes to give me more information about the cars. The salesman obviously knows more than I do and probably knows what's better for me. At this point, I'm using the peripheral routes and the central as I'm relying on what the salesman is saying, but also taking it all into consideration. From here on out, I use the peripheral route to roll out cars that don't fit my needs and consider the details that the salesman offers about the cars I'm more interested in. Conclusively, this theory just shows us the different ways people can think and how we make decisions, whether it be buying a car or deciding when to start your homework. With this in mind, we now have a better understanding on what can influence us to make certain decisions and how this could lead us to be better communicators and make wiser decisions. Thank you.